There's a sweet spot for when, exactly, to update the look of a vehicle. Tesla's on one end of the spectrum, with an aging lineup that's lost some of the zest it had when those vehicles were basically the only premium EV game in town. Rivian, meanwhile, is a fresh face with a unique aesthetic that is basically the fever dream of a car-interested REI superfan. Its signature ovoid headlight lamps trisecting a thin monolamp still give the R1S and R1T, and the upcoming R2 models, a defining, instantly recognizable visage. That's why, whether smartly, conservatively, or frugally, or more likely all three, Rivian hasn't changed the look of its second-generation 2025 Rivian R1T pickup and R1S SUV much. Maybe it didn't have a choice. Burning through cash, the company needs to gin up sales and cut costs. And this heavy mid-cycle refresh appears to do the latter and has a good chance of helping with the former. Rivian claims there are 600 individual hardware, software, and aesthetic changes between the two generations, and only a few of them are visible from the outside. We spent a day in the vehicles in the Pacific Northwest, the spiritual nexus of the Rivian shtick, to see how the second-gen R1S SUV and R1T truck have changed. Without parking a 2025 R1 near a previous model year vehicle, it's hard to discern the changes, but they're there. Small tweaks like moving the turn signals out of the oval DRL modules to where the fog lights used to be. The fog lights are now redundant because of the pattern and flexibility of the new Matrix LED headlight lamps. Adaptive drive beam, LED matrix tech. Hardware is on board, but the software to make it function won't be activated until later this year. The large light bar on the front and rear now includes animations in hazard mode, with the option to have a sequential series of lights indicate which way a driver would like approaching cars to move around a stopped Rivian. The company will also use the lamp's RGB function later to enhance the company's cute special display modes, such as its Easter eggish Halloween mode. More useful and impressive is the implementation of Dolby Atmos, an advanced surround sound system that we've already heard in the Lucid Air. No vehicle is an ideal soundstage, but Rivian's implementation Atmos-enhanced premium sound system is stunningly immersive. Think IMAX for your ears. Add in the new Connect Plus subscription service and you can enable Google Cast functionality as well as getting a native Apple Music implementation ad-free. With enough hotspot bandwidth, it seems like a pretty good way to pass the time at charging stops. Rivian hasn't announced pricing yet, but the standard connectivity package, including OTA updates, navigation, digital key, and so forth, is gratis. Also note that the 2025 Rivians will utilize ultra-wideband digital key tech for improved key recognition and also to support Apple Wallet, Apple Watch, and some Google Pixel devices. Also welcome are some new interior tweaks, like some touch and feel stuff, better and more stitching on panels and parts, new ambient lighting themes, and some new interior colorways. The palettes, materials, and vibe are all still technical outerwear, and the R1 interiors are still an impressive and upscale place to spend time. And the new 22-inch low-drag aero wheels look awesome too. The R1S and R1T are not lightweight vehicles, but they are EVs, and that means pulling mass out creates benefits all around. And sometimes less weight also equates to less outlay. Rivian desperately needs to cut per-vehicle costs. So while the various reductions in component weight and production complexity aren't necessarily interesting to potential buyers, they're of existential importance to this young automaker. Take the electronics. The first-generation R1S utilized 17 separate ECUs, each requiring connectors, time on the line plugging things in, and the wiring to hook it all together. You know how much copper costs these days? Rivian says it pulled 44 pounds of wiring, 1.6 miles of length, out of the vehicles, and reduced the ECU count to 7. The ECUs now put processes that need to share information on the same board, rather than on separate ECUs communicating through wiring. The result is a substantial increase in speed, and therefore processing power in addition to reduced complexity and weight. That processing power will enable, eventually, hands-free driver assistance in certain situations, i.e., pre-mapped divided freeways, mainly in appropriate conditions. The hardware's already there, including a heated front radar element and higher resolution cameras. Lane change assist will be available when the vehicles go on sale, and enhanced highway assist will be available later this year. Rivian says its driver assistance hardware now has 10 times the total processing power as it did before, and it will also leverage on-chip machine learning to improve the system's fidelity as owners drive. More trimming occurred at the battery pack enclosure's massive trays, essentially, that house the battery modules and are a structural component of the chassis. Instead of an expensive extrusion-heavy enclosure, Rivian's reached the scale and maturity to invest in high-pressure die casting for part of the enclosure. This shaved 55 pounds off the regular pack enclosure, and a whopping 154 pounds off the off-road pack, and reduced costs. Those are big numbers. Likewise, the electric motors on the three distinct powertrains, dual dash, tri-dash, and quad motor, are now all in-house designs and oil-cooled. The oil cooling allows the company to either dial up the performance of a same-sized, same-spec motor without thermal issues, or use less expensive magnets. Both equate to cost savings and benefit from modularity and efficiencies of scale. As a whole, Rivian CEO R.J. Scaringe told Motor Trend in a prior visit, the production optimization should result in a 35% reduction in materials costs for the base model vehicles with the lower-cost lithium iron phosphate, LFP battery packs, for example. Rivian's also fitted a heat pump to the trucks, an efficient heating setup that uses less juice to warm and cool the cabin, and what has been up until now a somewhat surprising omission. Speaking of heating, the large glass roof panel finally gets an electrochromatic tint function, something we, and no small number of owners, have been loudly clamoring for. This will significantly improve comfort and cooling loads whenever the sun's out. We couldn't speak to that in the saturated, overcast day we spent in it. Electric motors are all generally very efficient, torquey, admirable things, but the rate of evolution is staggering, and the knowledge engineers are gaining from the reams of data pulled from the customer fleet supercharges that process. Here's an example. The new tri-motor powertrain with 850 horsepower and 1,103 lb-ft essentially outperforms the old quad motor, 835 horsepower and 908 lb-ft of torque, while crushing its maximum range figure. With data gleaned from the old quad motor, Rivian rebalanced the power delivery a bit, determining the front drive unit, shared with the dual motor, didn't need to be so powerful to provide the requisite performance. The Juice Twin E-motors from the quad Outback also utilize integrated mechanical disconnects, so when they're not needed, the second-gen R1 tri-motors are essentially front-wheel drive vehicles, with serious efficiency benefits. Rivian estimates that, in conserve mode, the tri-motor could eke out a full 410 miles of range. Compare that to the first-gen quad motor, which only managed 328 miles. The tri-motor should be quicker to 60 miles per hour, too, with Rivian estimating a 2.9-second run. Our best in a quad motor was 3.1 seconds. Nor is the dual motor a slouch. The base vehicle uses the less expensive, less power-dense LFP battery, but still delivers 533 horsepower, 610 lb-ft, and a 4.5 SEC estimated 0 to 60 time. For $5,000 more, the dual motor performance jazzes that up to 665 horsepower, 823 lb-ft, and a 3.4 SEC 0 to 60 time, plus as much as 420 miles with the largest battery pack. The dual motor performance feels awfully potent out on a windy two-lane road. Hunker it down in sport and set the suspension to firm, and while there's less corner-to-corner warping to it than a tri-motor, there is no lack of torque or fun. By the way, Rivian doesn't talk about battery capacity, but we expect them to be 105 kilowatt-hours, 135 kilowatt-hours, and 180 kilowatt-hours, all on the enormous side. It means it's nuts. For one, this is now a 1,000-plus horsepower, 7,000-plus pound vehicle clocking in with 1,025 horsepower and 1,198 lb-ft. Rivian claims it'll hit 60 miles per hour in 2.5 seconds, matching the less powerful Tesla Cybertruck Beast's figures in our testing, and do the quarter in 10.5, which would nip the beast by half a second. To whet our appetite, Rivian put a pre-pro R1T and R1S quad motor on a quaint drag strip south of Seattle, and it had been saturated the night before, and the track had barely warmed up and dried out. Even with a prepped surface and electric tire blankets, both vehicles scrambled for grip as the Michelins bled out heat in the early morning air.